demonstration of throwing a pot in the Naval Postgraduate room. I did bring a couple of lumps of clay for you guys to play with. Feel free to open that up and play with it if you want to. It is a little messy, so you can squeeze the outside of it if you want. I wanted to drag in my potter's wheel and do a proper demonstration, but I just couldn't figure out how to do that. So we'll start off with the video. Okay, so the hardest thing when you're throwing the pot is you got to get it centered on the wheel. So this is a wheel throwing demonstration. The wheel goes around, you throw a pot, you make a nice little pot. I have a little primer as well. This is how you do it. We'll be going through this. You center your clay, you open it up, you pull the sides up, you establish the form. That is what you're going to see here. So what I'm doing right now is I am centering the clay on the wheel. And this is the hardest thing to figure out. And the reason it's so hard is because your body moves. And what you have to do, see that arm in there? That arm in the back there is in on my shoulder. It's unmovable. When you provide the clay with an unmovable surface as it moves in a circle, as Jack can tell you about with physics, it will center itself. And that's what this is. A couple of different pulls. There's a couple of different ways to do this, pushing and dropping down. So there's a guide there. It's pretty centered. And now I'm making a hole in the middle. So that's the next step. In order to make a pot, you gotta get a hole in the middle. That's the opening it up. And I do want to mention, it's more than just about clay. It's a coping mechanism. Doing art and working with clay, it's not just about trying to build something. It's about, it's a way of life and a way to find yourself and find your soul and grow your soul. It is really, really important to do something like this. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you do it well or do it poorly. You just need to do it. And it's getting out there and letting go of everything. It turns the voices off in your head you have because you're doing something mechanical, you're doing something creative. Now, clay is a fickle thing. This is a pretty soft clay, it's a white clay. Here's the first pull. So what that means is it's getting pulled up, you're pulling it up into a clay form. I slowed this down so you could get a good look at it. And I have a couple of tools that I use too. This is the most exciting part of this entire video for me, because you're actually getting some height. Very few tools. An old sponge and a piece of metal. That's all I'm using here. I've got the metal on the inside for some stability and this actual sponge on the outside providing the lift. And so what happens when you're pulling, it is called pulling because you are pulling that clay up as it moves around. And it's a constant struggle between putting water on the clay and pulling water off the clay. The water has to be on the outside and the inside in order for it to slip through your fingers as it's turning. But when the water gets into the clay, it starts to break down. You can especially see that at the top, that it gets kind of mucky and soft. And so it's constant pulling the water off, putting the water back on. If you do it too much, the whole thing will fall apart. So the next step then is shaping the form. So when you make a pot or something on the wheel, what you really do, you pull a cylinder first. And the only decision you make is if it's going to be a pot or a bowl shaped or a flat plate surface. And that, if it's a plate or a pitcher or a cup, you make a flat bottom. And if it's a bowl, you make a bowl pattern. And then after that, you start to shape it. So you can do a lot of different shapes. The key is you don't do anything too fast. Slowly put your hands on, slowly take your hands off. It's a pot. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty miraculous. There's a couple of different steps after this. Once the pot is formed, you can mess with it forever, but it's best not to do too much. The other thing is once this wheel stops, you can't tell that it's wobbling. So a day later, you have to trim it and you have to work on the bottom of the pot. So once the pot dries enough, you shape the bottom. You're still shaping and establishing this form, but you're establishing it from here on up. You have to get the foot. So the clay is soft, what they call leather hard. It's not super soft, it's not malleable soft, but it's soft enough that you can still dig into it and work through it and shape it. So this next step then is shaping the foot. It's fascinating. It's really, really fun. Again, same simple tools, I have one knife and a rib, another rib. This rib helps to compress the clay down. So once it's dry, it goes through a couple of different steps. This is this actual pot after it's been bisque fired. So it dried for a couple of days. I shot this video last weekend, and it went through the bisque fire. This is a very ugly stage, but it is the pot. It's still a little bit fragile. But then after it goes, so this is the first firing, it actually will go through 2 firings. I don't have the same pot, obviously, because it's sitting there. But once you glaze it and then fire it in a glaze fire, you can start to get something that looks a lot prettier. And that's where you decide, you know, at this point is where you decide what you want it to look like, different colors, different patterns on the outside, and you just take your time and figure out what it should look like. But the most important thing, as I mentioned, is it really doesn't matter if you do it well or you don't. You really just need to get out there and do it and find that different part of yourself and that creativity. That's master.
To evaluate Monique again, this seems to be one of my great opportunities that happens frequently in my life. There's nothing irksome about evaluating you. There's nothing vexatious about evaluating you.
Ooh.
Is that a word?
No.
It is now.
Look it up, it is. The things I loved about this speech, you were so relaxed as you developed over the time I've seen you as a speaker. You're just more and more comfortable up to it, and you showed that again today. I liked the philosophical, meditative dimension. You weren't just talking about the pot per se, but its broader implications. And I might point out, so that I don't get dinged by the general evaluator, that the purpose of this speech, which happens to be from the Speaking to Inform manual, an advanced Toastmasters manual, assignment number 3, the demonstration talk. Prepare a demonstration speech to clearly explain a process, a product, or activity. Conduct the demonstration as part of the speech delivered without notes. You hit that out of the park. You were outstanding. I also thought you did a terrific job with your video. One of the best uses of video I've ever seen in this club.
Yeah.
And we saw your beautiful little hands and all your skills, and it was completely appropriate to the plot. And then you had the examples to show us, all tied in beautifully. I loved the acronym of COPE. This could have been a little larger in terms of getting to the suggestion part. Suggestion, the font was still a little small, although I could read it. 2, you could have slowed down a bit. You really were rushing to get all this in. And that was demonstrated by some, as the person who's doing encounters and things like that will explain. You did rush a few things. You repeated yourself a couple of times. So just breathe, smile. Think of how happy our Toastmaster is all the time, or whatever it is. Then, when you finished up with your final conclusion, outstanding to end up with that message that you don't have to do it right, just do it. I would have liked to have seen somewhere in the body of your talk a little bit of expansion of that theme. This is tied into other meditative practices. Some people sit in chants, some people dance, some people do Tai Chi. I do pottery. That would have been a stronger talk. Wonderful Speaking to Inform number 3 talk. Madam Toastmaster.